What if ease isn't the opposite of ambition, but the place it's been trying to meet you all along? A conversation about success that doesn't just look good on paper, but actually feels good to live inside. The kind that feels different the moment you step into it. Not performative, not polished, just true. The kind that lets you breathe a little deeper. The kind that creates space. The kind that shifts the pressure and lingers longer than you expect. Hello, friends, and welcome to Radical Joy, the weekly practice of fighting for your light. In a world tuned to worry, this is our space to find a different signal, to discover the grounded, defiant, and yes, radical power of choosing joy. This is a vital reminder you are never alone. Dial 988 nationwide in the U.S. for the Mental Health and Suicide Crisis Hotline. It's a lifeline anytime. This is Season 4. Let's begin. Our guest, Dr. Alessandra Wall, consigliere, thought partner, author, and CEO of Noteworthy, has spent over 20 years as the trusted advisor behind some of the world's most driven leaders, founders, and exceptional women. From startups to the Fortune 100, her work guides these leaders through the decisions that matter most so they can sustain the drive, desire, bandwidth, and fulfillment they need to change the world for the better. Dr. Alessandra Wall, it is a pleasure to have you here with us here today on Radical Joy.
I am so glad to be here today, James.
Reading your list of accolades is a wonderful thing. After a very brief moment before we hit the record button, the energy that rolls off you is so lovely. And to now know that you use that so effectively to empower and bolster leadership, especially among women, is such a wonderful thing. We get a lot of folks on the show, and I especially love to focus on those who devote their time and energy to making sure that everyone stays up to speed.
Mhm.
So, pardon my terrible use of language there, but I get very excited to hear what it is that you are doing very specifically and differently to make sure that all of these populations are well supported.
Sure. No need to ask for any apologies on any of it. Before we started, for the listener, I asked James to not mention that I started my career as a clinical psychologist, right? To not put it in the list. And there was a reason for that, because I am not a psychologist anymore. But I did start my career as a psychologist. I actually started my career as a child psychologist. And I use that training all day, every day, whether it's in my family or with my clients. But you asked what I do and how I do things differently. I have the incredible privilege of getting to choose who I work with, which means I work with leaders at this point, women mostly, but not exclusively, but mostly, who I think are disrupting the system for the better. They are leading at a higher level. They are wearing their ambition proudly and boldly on the outside, which for a woman is a tough thing to do. They are truly successful, and they're the kind of people who, like, when they reach that place, the question is, what more, what now? And it's not in this like perfectionist, I can't be satisfied with what I've achieved. It's more from a place of, like, I've done this thing and this is really exciting and it has been great, but I am so aware that there is more, that I can do more, that I can have greater impact, whether it's personal or other. What more, what now? And some of these women are like star athletes, right? They're like, everything's great. They're on their ascendancy. They want people like me. We use the word conciliary and thought partner because they need somebody to bounce these ideas off of. They need someone who's going to think as big, who's going to call, can I cuss? I
Of
didn't ask.
course.
Who's going to
Yeah.
call their bullshit out, who's going to sit with them, and using my background as a psychologist, also kind of know all the things that come together to actually propel us forward or hold us back or like pull us away from where we are. In this concept of radical joy, some of what I love the most is that a lot of these women are really successful in certain areas, but they're looking at this idea that success is not it's not a single thing. It's not my title. It's not how big my company is. It's not how much money I'm making or how much I've banked. There is this sense of, I want the work I'm doing to excite me. I want it to mean something. I want to be personally fulfilled. So I work with a lot of women who, on paper, really like they are doing so well. But when you talk to them behind closed doors, they're like, I'm bored. Or I'm here and professionally things are really, really successful, but something's off. And that idea of more is, I believe that it's possible to be fulfilled and to be successful. I believe that, yeah, life is going to be hard as it should be. It wouldn't be fun if it were super easy all the time. And I can't be happy all the time, right? Joy is a transient. It's a transient state. It's not a trait. It needs the opposite of joy so that we can register when joy comes up. So that they're not sitting going, life is supposed to be perfect and I'm supposed to be happy all the time and everything's supposed to be fine. But it is more of this like, I want to wake up in the morning and more days than not want to walk into my office. I want to think about the people I'm working with and feel inspired by them. I want to look at life outside of work and go, yeah, I'm going to fight with my partner. And sometimes I'm going to think they're moronic. And there are days where I'm going to wish I could run away from my family. And sometimes my friends say stupid things. And sometimes I'm the friend who's saying stupid things. But in general, like life is good. And they sit there often enough and go, okay, I'm going to add another cup. Fuck, I am so lucky.
Yeah.
Right? Like I am so, and I did this yesterday, just as a side note. I was taking a walk with my dogs and I went down the street I'd not been down before. And I think I think it was a mockingbird. And I just sat in the shadow of a tree. And I texted my mom and my brother who are in France, and my father passed away 20 plus years ago. And I said, I'm feeling this moment of incredible gratitude to daddy because he's the first one to have taught me to experience joy in the mundane. And I feel so like this moment of just the shade, the sun, the wind, this bird. It was such a moment of bliss. But it's about having those come regularly. Like that's the work I do. And
Yes.
we talked about sustaining. The people I'm working with, they're making big changes. And if we don't have that in the background, right, all pieces of it in the background of the work we're doing, the people we're working with, our life when we're walking our freaking dogs for a couple of miles on a Sunday, in our relationships, then it's not sustainable because the work requires a ridiculously heavy lift.
Yes. Yes. And you have made this beautiful platform, finding that moment of bliss in the simplest of things, the way they all come together like that. They fit like pieces of a puzzle, but like a child's puzzle, not
Mhm.
one of those 1,000 piece numbers, but like the ones they use for the kindergartners.
Mhm.
Large pieces, very round edges that fit together so beautifully to make that program running in the background that makes it so ready to offer
Mhm.
that gratitude to the universe. It's basically a signal. It says, yes, this is where we begin. And everything that comes from here is there's no choice but success. The
Yeah.
universe literally conspires for our success when we start from a place as pure as this, as simple as this. It's wonderful.
One of my clients taught me the word for that, the belief
Okay.
in that. It's called pronoia. It's the
Okay.
opposite of paranoia. So
Okay.
pronoia is the belief that the universe is conspiring in your favor versus
Hmm.
paranoia, the belief that others or the universe is conspiring against you. And there is something really important in what you said, right? All like to have the things we want in our lives, we have to work our asses off. Like,
Yes.
but there are plenty of people who do that work and are not achieving the things they want to achieve or not getting what they want. I would argue that there are many things at play, but there are
Hmm.
huge mindset pieces in there. There's to me, there's a huge piece about knowing yourself. I think, and especially early in my career, I met a lot of women who were working really hard at building dreams based on goals they set in their late 20s or early 30s. But now they're in
Yes.
their 40s or 50s or 60s, and they're not the same women. So they get to this place where they're working really hard because that's the last time they slow down to ask themselves, who am I? What do I want? What do I need in this moment to feel fulfilled? Not happy, not like that sense of global fulfillment. And when you can pause, and noteworthy, we talk a lot about mastering the pause, living in the pause. The pause can be a pause in how we speak for effect, like that. It can be a
Mhm.
pause in thinking. It can be a pause. My clients are all super busy, but they take pauses to be able to come in and work with me. And every single one of them will say, "But Alessandra, I have to." And I'm like, "It's a choice. Like I, I was up at 5:30 the other day to go to my own coaching call
Mhm.
because that's when the coaching call was. I've shifted my schedule to attend coaching calls. And so when we create that pause, we can realign. And so those things put together, one, the practices to realize like the world is full of abundance. That doesn't mean that we can have all the things we want all the time, but there's plenty of abundance. I spent the last 2.5 years practicing moving from a scarcity mindset to abundance mindset. And I
Yes.
can tell you the difference in my stress levels, how I operate, the opportunities that is coming is it's night and day. I have the same degrees, the same work ethic. It's where I'm placing my energy and my attention that shifts. It's the
Yes.
way I come into conversations that shifts with the pause to take care of ourselves, to check into how we're doing, to realign. Those things then create like this perfect storm that clears everything out. And then we have our pronoia thing going on, where the universe is
Exactly.
conspiring in our favor.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you're here. You have literally just summed up, I'd say, a season and a half of everything we do here at Radical Joy. That's
I mean,
exactly
what
it.
is
It's
so
putting yourself in the
important?
mindset. Yeah. And abundance and checking in. We're always talking about reassessing. Like you're saying, you set a goal in your 20s and now you're in your 30s, your 40s, or even later, and you're still working toward a goal that served you very well when you were a different human being. You just haven't looked back to see if that's still serving, if that's still something you want to strive and struggle for. And even struggle isn't the right word. Strive is, because that still gives a connotation of positive
Mhm.
motion. Struggle means that we're fighting for it. And though there is nobility in the battle, I think that strive is so much more positive because I have my eye on the sights and it's more about the climb than it is the fight. And I love
Yeah,
that.
I like the distinction between doing the work and hustling. Like you got to do the
Yes.
work to get where you go, but the hustle, the idea of hustling, unless it's a dance from the 70s, is really like it's it's this slogging. And when I signed on with my current coach, who I've now been working with in one form or another for 3 years, I said, and they're like, why? I went to an event. Why are you showing up? I'm like, and I said, I want to stop hustling in my business. I am successful, but I'm successful because I'm working so hard. And he introduced, it's silly because it's just a sentence until you try to apply it as a practice. But he's like, what if it could be easy? And I have it up. I have a whiteboard here, and it's up on my
Mhm.
whiteboard. I have a few things I remind myself of. But at the top for this year is like, what if it could be easy? Like, how do I do the thing I want to do without feeling like I need to hustle? And again, these are all things that I bring to the women I work with. They're so used to, they all got to where they got because they're smart, because they worked harder than the people around them, because they put in more hours. And that is so useful at a certain chapter of your life. And then there becomes a point where actually it works entirely against you.
Yes. Agree. And that hustle culture thing, it feels as though if you're not being productive every single waking moment of your day, you're not doing enough. And that could not be farther from the truth. It's almost like having the 24-hour news cycle. I can do in an hour and get it all in, or I can continue to repeat or dwell or ruminate over a 24-hour news period. And it's more crazy making than it is productive, at least in
That's
my experience.
It is. I am terrible. I cannot give you the reference for the article or the research, but there's research plenty at this point that shows, for example, that we will take whatever time we give ourselves to do the things we need to do. So you can have a 15-minute task and you can give yourself an hour to do it, and it will take you a full hour to do it. And humans are notoriously terrible at assessing how much time it'll take to do things. If we tell ourselves something is going to be really hard, we will make it really hard. We will extend the time. We will make it laborious. We will not stop to think about how to do things much more quickly. There is Dan Sullivan. Have you heard of him?
I'm not familiar.
Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy are two business consultants, coaches who've talked about the notion of 10xing what you do. And the way they talk about 10xing, they're like, listen, you can set 2x goals or you can set 10x goals. And a 10x goal, let's say you want your business to grow or your career to grow. 10x doesn't mean I'm going to make 10 times the amount of money in the same amount of time. 10x is like, wait, what if I set this goal and I set this arbitrary 5-year date to achieve it? What happens if I give myself a 2.5-year date? And I figure out how to solve this problem in 2.5 years instead of 5 years, right? Suddenly, the way you have to think to collapse time, the way you approach the problem in order to collapse time creates real novel ways of doing things. It forces you to speed things up. So we can 10x a goal by shortening the amount of time, by increasing the amount of joy or pleasure, by reducing the amount of stress. All of those things enter our 10x. I've been thinking about that a lot for myself. And as a concept, again, I use a lot with the women I work with. I'm like, okay, but what's the 10x version of this? Yeah. Meaning not how do we make you work for bigger, more, but like, how do we do it with more ease? We're adding a multiplier factor by doing it with more ease. How do we do it differently? Like, I know we can achieve this by working really, really, really hard and working over time and being the point person, I talk about Wonder Woman, right? The one who's like always there to answer all the questions. But what if you didn't have to be that person? Like, how could we still achieve that? And that's that collapsing. That's that 10x versus 2x thinking on things.
Yes.
And it's possible.
Oh, of course. And I think that you make it a fantastic, it's almost like the goldfish. If you put a goldfish in a huge tank, it's going to get bigger. If you put it in a small bowl, it's going to stay about the same size. It's a similar situation. You're like, yeah, if you give yourself X amount of time, you will grow to fit that very leisurely timeline you've given yourself to complete this situation. If you shrink the timeline, if you make it so that you must work more efficiently. Also, who wants to slog? If I could get a 5-year timeline finished in 2.5 and not kill myself while doing it, of course I'd want to do that. The accomplishment is just right there waiting on me. All I have to do is make sure that I take the air out of it and act, more efficiently again. And people, I think, underestimate or devalue how precious it is not to have to struggle. Peace is so valuable. People continue to talk about their paycheck or this, that, and the other thing. It's like, yeah, you get paid a very good amount of money. The question is, how miserable is your job? How much do you dislike showing up every day for this sort of thing? Understood. It's a job. Not everyone's supposed to absolutely love it. Wouldn't it be nice if you could?
So you just use the wouldn't it, and I think of it as like, what if, right? That's that same mentality where you can walk into a situation, for anybody listening, for us, for me, for you, James, right, where we might recognize that there's a disconnect between what we say we want and the way we're operating. Yes. And then a lot of us will go into like problem solving. So what's the next thing I need to do? What are the 5 steps? Sometimes what's really magical and useful is to sit and go, what if?
6 impossible things before breakfast.
What if this were easy? What if I could connect with this person? Like, what would need to happen? Like, and if we mix the what if this could be easy, what if I could do this and it could be easy, then we can start thinking really creatively. But for those of us who have had to work our asses off to get where we are, and I started life with undiagnosed ADD. Like, as a kid, I felt so dumb. I took 5, 6 hours. I'm the kid who went to school, had a job, came back, locked herself in her bedroom and worked for 3, 4 hours at night and locked herself in her bedroom on the weekends to study, did the same thing in college, would take copious notes, had to take notes about the notes I took. You should know it's the only way I encoded information. It's only once I became a child psychologist and started testing people for ADHD, I'm like, oh, that's the thing. So I learned very early on that working really, really hard was the only way for me to do well enough, because I wasn't even a great student. I worked really, really hard to get okay grades, right? But okay grades got me into college, got me into a good college. I went to Duke, which is a good college, got me
Great
from
college.
college into graduate school, got me a PhD, right? Like the more I worked on things I loved and was interested in, actually, the better my grades got and the easier it was to learn. So, but when we have been hardwired and then additionally conditioned by society to give ourselves gold stars for struggling, for life being hard,
Yeah.
for doing all-nighters. I have never done an all-nighter in my life because that's not how my brain works.
No.
But I have locked myself in libraries all day, like from
Yeah.
8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on a Saturday while all my friends were partying. Um, it is very hard to come back from how we reconcile what it means to be successful or to be good or to be driven when the only model we have is you got to suffer in some way and you got to work a really, really long amount of time, and it has to suck.
Yep. Agree. We've been conditioned for that. It's just the way it is. I mean, ever since the 40-hour work week, people
Mhm.
just show up to the job because you have to fill the time. We have to make it appear as though we're putting in the time. Whenever most people can get most of the job they need get done in a few hours, we
Mhm.
stretch it out. And it's just a slog. Like you were saying earlier, it's just so much that we could be doing otherwise. I live in the Netherlands, and it's so interesting to watch the difference in dynamic between the live to work versus work to live.
Mhm.
Around here, the grocery store closes at 8 p.m. and at 7:55, you better have everything in your arms already standing to put it on the conveyor belt, because in the next minute they're closing everything and they're going to give you the stink eye until you get out. And may God help you if at 8:01 you're still inside the door. It's like, no, that's
Yeah.
that's not how things are done here. And it's brilliant to watch because that's just not part of the culture.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in France. My mom is first generation French of Italian descent. Dad's American, but I didn't move to the States till I was 18.
Mhm.
And so both looking at first of all, I've been to the Netherlands a couple of times, but looking at the French and Italian way of doing things, um, we had the French take a full month of vacation in the summer. It's
Mhm.
not that they get 4 weeks a year. It's like they're 4 weeks that happen in the summer, usually consecutively. Now, does does that work ethic play into the fact that France is not the like biggest world economy? Probably. It's also a small country, but I mean, sure. But there is something about recognizing like you can love your job, you can be really dedicated, and the whole point is to live.
Yes.
And so I grew up outside of Paris and in Paris, and so really going, on weeknights, people aren't going directly home. First of all, often they're stopping to buy whatever groceries they're going to get for that night, but
Yep.
then they're stopping at cafes and restaurants, and they're talking, and they're meeting, and they're doing things. Even in the winter when, you know, probably same no, exactly same thing as the Netherlands, right? In the winter, it's like dark at 4.
Right.
It's like it's not light until 9, so your days are really short. People are still you can see this. I love in my mom's apartment, I can see across a courtyard, and there's a family that nearly always has people over for dinner. Well, our dinner table sits in front of this window, so just happen to see their dinner table.
Right.
I'm like, those are different people than the previous night, right? And there is this thing about saying, "No, things are closed on this day," and forcing a stop. Now,
Yes.
did I love moving to the States and being able to go to my neighborhood handyman store until, like, 24 hours a day? Yes. Do I need to be buying paint at 2 a.m.? No.
No.
And does somebody need to be working? Like, shift work is so hard on the body and the brain.
Yes.
Does somebody really like, there are plenty of places where we need shift work, hospitals,
Yeah.
airplane controllers,
Yes.
we need shift workers. Uh, like, we don't need shift workers at a handy person store, right? We just don't.
It goes back to what you were talking about. The amount of time that you give it is the amount of time it will take. And I
Mhm.
think that feels very similar in this respect. If you know you can go at 2 a.m. to get paint for your kitchen, and you just happen to be like I will work myself into a fizz. Like I will look at something on my list, and if I didn't get it done in the appropriate time during the day, it might keep me up at night. If I wake at 2 a.m. with this gnawing need to go to the 24-hour hardware to get this paint for the kitchen so I can start it at 7 and maybe get a coat on before I need to go to work, it's there, it's possible, and therefore I will try to fill it if I can. Without that possibility, that anxiety dissipates. I'm
Mhm.
not gonna say it's disappearing, but I will say that it lessens significantly. The fact that I can, and perhaps didn't get to it during the working hours of the day, quote unquote, might keep me up at night just from the personality type that I have. And I don't know that I'm alone, because if you're going at 2 a.m., I might see you there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not these days anymore, but, as a graduate
Right. Oh,
student,
me
it's
neither. I
great.
live here. That's not an option any longer. 24-hour ain't nothing around here,
But we
which I
have
love.
versions of that in everything, right? So when I talk about that sustainability of mission and impact, it is about looking at my clients and going, what if it were possible at the end of the day for you to turn off your computer and not have to respond to people? And my clients are CEOs, CFOs, they're business owners, they're entrepreneurs, they're like at the top of that food chain, and they're still checking the email, checking the, like, going in, doing in the things, feeling like they have to respond. I'm like, what if everybody could just end their day? And if you're at the top of the food chain, you're setting you're setting that example, and you're setting the standards for everybody else. What if you didn't need to be the point person for everything? What if you learned how to delegate? What if we just stopped for a minute and considered what you love doing that you excel at and made that the thing that you spend the most time doing? And while you're at it, figure out what that is for everybody in your company.
Mhm.
And then we stop thinking about your title says this, therefore you should do all of these things. And you can come in and have some agency and go, listen, I know I can do this thing. I can even do it really well, but I hate it. It literally makes me miserable. But I know you love this stuff. So how about you work on that? I'll work on this thing that's not your thing, but that I love. And we create this balance. And it's about creating that. I mean, we're talking about work, but a lot of what I do with my clients, what we find out is the same patterns that play out in their household play out in their career. So there are so many times when we're actually talking about relationship stuff, or we're
Right.
talking about dynamics with children or with elderly parents, and we can constantly pull the parallels. So regardless of where we're working, there's transformation. And my clients sometimes will come and go, you didn't warn me. Now I warn. Now I genuinely warn people. But I didn't back in the day, where like, you didn't tell me that the work we were going to do was going to completely disrupt my marriage, my friendships, and things like that. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I really should have, because what we're talking about is making sure that the way you operate in the world is in alignment with who you are today.
Yes.
Not who people think you should be, not who
Mhm.
you were 20 years ago, not who you tell yourself should be the right version of you. And if we make that change in how you communicate with your team or with your clients, then chances are you're going to start noticing how that plays out and how you communicate with your aging parents or with your partner. And you're going to want to change it there too.
Yes.
So it's super disruptive in the short run, but in the long run, there is what I should hear from the women I work with. What I usually hear is, I didn't think this was possible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the sign of success. It's like, oh my God, I could not, I didn't know. I just didn't know. I was like, yeah. Right? That's why I have a coach, because there are lots of things that I know for you, but I don't know for me, so I need somebody's help to, like, figure out how to do it for myself too.
Exactly. It always amazes me whenever I talk with some of my clients and they're like, "Oh, you have a mentor as well?" I was like, "Of course I have a mentor." I said, "Because I can look at people like you from the outside and tell you exactly what I see, and we can adjust it from there." I said, "I can't do that for myself. I'm way too close to the center of the problem. The center of the problem is me. I need somebody to give me guidance on those kinds of things, reflect back at me what they think they see as my limiting factors, my obstacles, so that we can work in ways to get around or get through or over them."
Mhm.
And that's so valuable.
I wanna reiterate something you said earlier, like, when we were talking about
Mhm.
um, pronoia, excuse me, pronoia.
Sure.
Um, I said it took me 2.5 years to learn how to think abundantly, and I did not do that work alone. I did it in part, because the business coach I was working with at that time had an energy coach, and I'm
Okay.
like, "Whatever, I'll just walk." I I now read tarot daily. So, but at the time I was like, whatever. I'm like, as a psychologist, I actually don't care. I don't care if it's placebo effect. I don't care if this is cognitive psychic play. I don't care if there are energy fields in the world or like a goddess coming out who's going to do, I will do what you tell me to do, because I know that I carry too much stress from never feeling that it's enough. Like no matter where I was, for me, there was always like, is this sustainable? Will I be able to do this? When will I lose this? How do I create more of it? So, one was that. Two, it's listening to podcasts like this one. I had a few podcasts that I would listen to every single day, some that were really short. I won't lie. I listened to most of my podcasts in 1.7 to 2x speed,
Same.
but I needed to have this, like this echo in the world of not just one person saying, Alessandra, it's possible, but having other people and these tidbits of wisdom would just drop. Right?
Yes.
And then it was in doing that work, then there was the internal personal work, which I'm sure you do with your mentees, right? Where there's
Mhm.
an internal practice where I would learn um, to sit down, like, and these are things I did in various different ways, but really learning to sit down, to practice the pause, to practice the art of the pause, to set my
Yes.
intentions, to check my energy. Again, things I do for my clients all the time, but things I do better, so much better for them now,
Yes.
because they're not something I do once in a blue moon, but they're integrated practices for me.
Mhm.
And then I still continue to listen to Radical Joy, to podcasts, to other things like that in order to stay grounded. Because there are days where I walk out and I'm like, the universe is conspiring in my favor. Life
Right?
is great.
Yes.
Everything is coming up, Alessandra. And things like today, I got an email from somebody I made a proposal to, that came up as a no. And I had
Mhm.
this moment when I received that email. I'm like, that sounds right. Literally, it wasn't like this, oh my goodness, like this is, it's like, no, that sounds right. Like the energy wasn't right. I usually am super excited about the people I work with. There's this
Mhm.
love story thing that happens. They need to be a little bit scared, because it's a big investment of time, of energy, of money,
Yeah.
but also really excited because of the potential of what's there. And that
Mhm.
wasn't there. And I'm like, "Well, it's fine." Like that was a moment this morning of like, yeah, everything's coming up, Alessandra, because that thing needed to like create space. But then it's even in the realization that that's the reaction I had. You have the secondary win of like, oh, it is so good because 3 years ago this would have happened. I'd be like, what did I do wrong? What did I need to do? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm good.
Yep.
And I had a six-figure proposal where that happened earlier this year too,
Mhm.
and I was like, "Oh," there's part of me that's like, "Ooh, did I need to, like, ask for less in order," and I'm like, "No, I asked for what I knew what the work what would be involved in
Mhm.
doing this, what it would require of me time-wise. I knew what the value would be for the client." I'm like, and that is the shift that you're talking about, where we can sit, and it's not that everything comes out your way. It's that however things come out, there is this sense of Okay, well, that makes sense. And what possibility does this open? Whether it's a yes to a huge proposal or a great new client, or whether it's a no. But it's podcasts like this, and it's mentors like you, and it's people like you that made that possible because I knew the science. I'm a psychologist by training. I got a PhD in how to
Yeah.
change the way people think. I I have all the books. I've read them. Not all of those.
Right.
I haven't read all of those. Let's not pretend if you're watching and there's video, like, I haven't read all of them. But I've read a lot of them on
Right.
psychology, on mental state, but that's passive. It's passive taking in. So that combination of the right message at the right time in an echo with active, that was the
Mhm.
shift.
Yes. It's always so fun for me to work or be around people who are very much science focused, incredibly intelligent. They speak multiple languages. They've traveled extensively. It's so interesting to try to speak with them on what it is that I do as far as I'm concerned, because of course they are far more educated. The thing that I know is what's worked for me. I
Mhm.
operate off experience and what we've done. And to watch them struggle with the fact that they are so educated and know so much about the science of other fields like engineering or chemistry or any of these other kind of things. And you with your psychology, it takes a point where, like you were speaking about earlier, I don't care what it is. I just need something to work because
Mhm.
I am this close. I just need the breakthrough. I need the push over the boundary. I need someone to see what's happening here, give me the exercises, give me the practices, push me over the line, and away we will go. And that's honestly all it takes.
Yep.
Because these small little like affirmations and things that you write in your journal, and like you're saying, taking a moment, having your pause. Yes, that's what builds the foundation.
Well, it's really fascinating because there is a large body of research now on all of this. So when I get to meet skeptics, I talk about reticular activating system. I'm like, here's the thing. We know that the way the brain works when you set your mind to something, when you believe that something is possible, there is a part of your brain called the reticular activating system that gets activated. And then its job is to scan the environment to find the thing that you know is true. So, this is a reason why when you decide to buy a car, suddenly you see that car all over the place. You're like,
Everywhere.
wait, I thought I was being so original. Or when for people who decide on a baby's name, and then they
Mhm.
realize everybody's kid is named Bella, Sophia, Luca, whatever, Matteo.
Yep.
And it's like, because the reticular activating system suddenly gets activated, and the brain will look for that thing in the world and starts recognizing all the patterns of that thing.
Yes.
There's studies on optimism that were done. There's a study I've been quoting a lot to my clients where they had groups of people take an assessment before an exercise and just assess how optimistic or pessimistic they thought they were. And then they gave them a newspaper and they said, your job is to count every image in this newspaper and tell us how many images are in the newspaper, and then we're done. But somewhere in the newspaper, there was a line that says there are 42 pictures in this newspaper. You can close the newspaper. And the optimists saw the line at a significantly higher frequency than the pessimists. The pessimists did not see that. So they went and they scanned and they scanned and they counted and they might get to the number 42, but a lot of the optimists, I think it was really early on, like page 2 or something like that. And they just looked at it, they closed it, they put it there 42 pictures. Right? So there is this ability when we train our minds to see opportunity and possibility where we can then see it. And my clients say this all the time. We will start somewhere. They're looking at the world a certain way, super successful way that's gotten them to where they are. We talk about what they want and what they need. We talk about what they need that is missing. And we talk about the possibility of that. And very rapidly, they'll come and they'll say, oh, you know that thing we were talking about? Like this opportunity came up. And one of my clients, Shauna, said it best. She's like, Alessandra, here's the thing. First of all, I never imagined that this would be possible. I never thought about it. But now that it's happening, I realize it was always in front of me. I just couldn't see it before.
There it is.
Right? It is
That's
that
it.
pause and sight.
Yes. And actually looking for it. I think that so many of my clients, especially, they will look at something and it's almost like blinders. It's almost they put a hand in front of their eyes. They know it's there, they can sense it, but there's also a fear of the success of doing it and also a fear of the failure in not doing it. And the only rational answer they can compute before they go through this exercise, this work, is to just not do either, is
Mhm.
just to wait. Because if I don't try, I can't fail or succeed. Both of those outcomes I'm terrified of doing. So what
Yeah.
I do is I just pause here, and it's not like a productive pause. It's just a hesitation. It's an obstacle that they can't seem to overcome, and it really isn't that high. It's just something that needs to be worked through relatively easily, but they need permission or they need a system to give themselves permission to do it.
Well, and I will say you're giving them the pause, right? More than the system, it's the time, it's the moment to ask yourself questions. Because that question, that thing you just said, right? Fear of success. People often ask, what's the worst that could happen if you fail? But there's
Mhm.
that follow up question. It's like, what if you took the time to actually ask yourself and not blow off the question, what's the worst that could happen if you succeed? And instead of saying, well, no, nothing because I'd succeed, go, no, no, there's an answer. There's a worst case scenario. If I succeed, then I will have to live up to it. Then I'll have more work. Then I will have to give up this other thing. Like there, but slowing down, having
Yeah.
somebody know what questions to ask, right? And then slowing down and having somebody hold you to actually glancing past the surface of stuff
Yes.
and answering, that's the beginning of the spark of change.
Mhm. And being able to answer each of those cascading questions after,
Mhm.
because you whenever the fear of success is the main focus, there are a lot of other questions that follow. Like you gave me at least 3 or 4 examples just then. Great. Let's continue. We've already like started down the rabbit hole. Let's just keep going. What
Yeah.
now? Now you have to maintain. Now there are expectations. Now this has to do. Now you have to sacrifice this other thing that you would have liked to have explored, but you don't necessarily have the time, resource, etc., to go after it. But I wasn't going after it before. So, yes, but it's still an option you would have liked to have. All of these things feel so insurmountable until you start to sort of separate them. It's a cluster. And then whenever you break them off into individual units or spores, is whenever you can sort of crush each one of them individually. So they're so much more manageable.
Yeah. It just something just came to mind also as you were speaking with the fear of success for your listeners and your people to pay attention to. Sometimes the biggest fear of success is who you'll leave behind and who you have to leave behind in order
Oh,
to be successful,
yes.
right? Sometimes in making the changes
Yes.
you need to make, you realize that there are dynamics and relationships and people who you might love or care about or they're important to you, but they are not part of the next chapter.
Yes.
And that becomes really scary, and sometimes people know that unconsciously, they don't realize it consciously, but unconsciously they realize it,
Yeah.
and it creates this massive roadblock.
Yes. Agree. Because those connections are so important, because
Mhm.
as you're coming up, I know personally that, again, I speak from so much experience. That's where most of my connections come from. You are relying on this person so heavily for so many things. They could be a mentor. They could be someone that is an example, a role model. And as you continue to grow and develop, perhaps you surpass the master, and the thought that you continue on your journey, perhaps at a different speed or whatever, leaving them behind is terrifying,
Yeah.
because then what? Never thinking that there's someone along the way that's going to be the next level of mentorship that you need in order to continue your path.
Yeah.
It's just like, go ahead.
No, no, it's just like
No, I was just going to give another example, but there's no reason. Go for it.
I was gonna say, I have a client specifically in mind right now who I've worked with on and off for a decade at this point, at different points in her journey. But one of the big pieces of work we've done is in order for her to come into her full expression of power, of authority, of success, she had to honestly like let go of 98% of her relationships.
Oh, wow. Friends
Oh,
and
yeah.
romantic? All of
Friends
them.
and romantic and family.
Oh,
People
wow. Okay.
who they were all about taking and taking and taking and never giving. And in their orbit, she she was small. In their orbit, she was a battery that was drawn on, but she was never recharged.
Mm.
Um, and we were just talking about her. She and I were just talking recently. It's painful, right? Because
Yeah.
you have lots of people, suddenly you have no people, you have to rebuild, but now you're rebuilding with a higher standard. The goal is
Yes.
not to rebuild and replay the same dynamics. It's
Ag-
lonely. There is that
Agree.
stage of transition that's really like it's the messy middle, it's the goop of the cocoon, right?
Sure.
Where it's lonely and you don't have all the answers and you don't know what the other side is going to look like. There's a lot of internal faith that you have to have, but you also have to have the capacity
Yes.
to sit with the discomfort of not having your shit together and not having all the answers.
Agree. I was having dinner last night with a friend of mine here in town. We were down by the river. Beautiful. Evening. We were talking about things and he was asking me about radical joy. He says, it's not common that men are as vulnerable or as exposed doing something like that. He says, did you have people make fun of you or things like that? I was like, yeah, I lost a lot of friends, especially from where I left and where I've come to. I said, where I am now, I'm still building friends and tribes. So people know about that before they become my friend. And so it isn't an obstacle anymore. But from my
Mhm.
old life, plenty of them. I had to give up a lot of them. And then I told him, I said, he said, that sounds really scary. It sounds very lonely. I said, yes, on both counts. And when you do something that ignites your passion, there is something about someone who is walking with their alignment exactly where it needs to be that sends the signal to your people. And you're a beacon and they start to gather. Now, it doesn't happen necessarily quickly, but it happens very deeply. And he's one of them because I haven't been
Mhm.
here that long, but he also heeded the call. And I said, it's just like that. You find your people, you show them you're weird as soon as possible so they can either get freaked out and go the hell away, or they can crowd around you because they're your tribe.
Yep.
But you just try to be as efficient with it as possible while being your best and most aligned self with what you know you were put here to do.
Mhm. I like your use of the word weird. I went to a coaching intensive held by my coaches in Spain last month, and at the end of the event, I was seated with a group of fellow coaches, and I was watching. We were in the courtyard of a hotel, and I was watching a young woman who was not part of our group kind of look at us, and you could tell she was sitting there going, "These people are weird." And I looked at them and I'm like, "I just want you all to know, you are weirdos, like, every single one of you is fucking weird."
Right?
And I'm like and it feels so good to be home. And weird
Yeah.
means they think at a different level. Weird means they aspire, they're building, and they're not always building in the same way. Weird meant at the time that we were doing a cacao ceremony and pulling oracle cards, but which is what I think the young woman was looking at. But sometimes they're weird in their greatness, in the fact that there are people there who've moved away from seven-figure careers because there was something more, like they needed the challenge and the excitement. And they're building seven-figure businesses. Right,
Yes.
so but that faith, instead of hunkering down in security and that faith of I got here because I was challenged and it was exciting. The only way to stay here, wherever here is to find what's challenging and exciting, and it isn't this thing that I can do in my sleep that pays really well. Like those shifts, it is the weird that presents us with the exceptional. When you stay
Agree.
around people who are all, like, the same and boring, you're never going to be around exceptional people, ever.
Truth. Truth. Absolutely, and you keep going for the secure answer, the one that doesn't that the not lowest common denominator, but the safest outcome. Security is so important, and I keep trying to share with so many. I was like, "Look, money's great. It makes the world go around. I'm not trying to dissuade you otherwise. What I am trying to tell you is that it will not buy you peace. It will not buy you satisfaction. Whenever you are aligned with your true calling, money will come, and the peace will also be there, and you will sleep that of babies and angels, okay? It's one of those things that just fills you to the top and you keep pouring from the vessel and it just keeps refilling by morning. It's so important and
Mhm.
beautiful once you really tap into it and trust it, which isn't easy. It's a big jump, but weirdos do it all the time.
Yeah. Well, and trusting it really is about trusting yourself,
Yes,
right? Like,
sure.
ultimately, we say it, but it is about having, um so I think about confidence a lot. People ask me about confidence and about executive presence, and I'm like, first of all, executive presence is not something you feign. Just, when I was in Granada, we went and watched a flamenco dancer,
Oh,
multiple, and one of them was young. She was in her 20s. That woman had executive presence. When you watched her start, and she was like, and the way she stood in the room, the way she held her space, the way she moved in space, I guarantee she doesn't have that everywhere she goes. But when she is dancing, she might be performing, but that is not a performance. The authority, the trust that she has in herself, that she can be there, is so big. So when we talk about confidence, confidence isn't walking around thinking you're the best thing since sliced bread, you're always going to be successful, things are always going to work out for you. It is the fundamental belief that you got it,
yeah,
right? I got it. Like, A, I can be successful, but B, even if this blows up in my face, I can figure this out. That's confidence. Because if I
yes,
know, even if this blows up in my face, I can figure this out, then I can try things that feel risky or challenging or outside my scope of ability. And I can fail, and the failure isn't going to bring me down. It isn't going to break me. I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna figure it out. Like, maybe what I figure out is this isn't for I tried this isn't working for me. I'm good, I just learned something. Maybe what I figure out is this didn't work, and I think this is why it didn't work, and so attempt 2 through 27, we iterate every single time, and attempt 28, suddenly we got it.
exactly. And we keep talking about it here on Radical Joy. The harshest lessons are usually learned through failure, but they're
Mm,
ones you don't forget.
yeah,
The high achievers, so many of these people that we see, Fortune 500 companies, leaders of society and business, they realize that failure is nothing but a lesson. They don't shy away from it. They don't fear it. They know it's going to hurt. It's going to sting. It's going to be unpleasant. And it's going to bring a wealth of knowledge and experience that can be used and applied in so many other ways. It's worth the trade.
yeah. I mean, for the parents who are listening here, this is really important. We have 2 going on 3 generations of children right now. Some are young adults whose parents have, out of love, out of misguided love, eliminated failure, eliminated distress, eliminated discomfort for their kids. So, if they were the losing team, they were the losing team because they still got a trophy. If there was something that was too hard in school, well, I'm going to help you, or we're going to talk to the teacher about how it's not fair that it's too hard because, yeah, there's some kids who are at this level, but you're not, so the test should be brought down to your level, and we start bringing down. They are the people who, like, kids are feuding, and they are figuring out, they're solving all the feuds for their children.
Yes.
And what that creates is very, very anxious children and adults. That creates disempowered, disenfranchised, helpless adults and children. There is a guarantee, it is tied, it's not the only thing, to the rise in anxiety, depression, to the rise in, like, what we're seeing with really extreme responses to unhappiness, like school shootings or other things like that. It's like, I've not been taught, I have not been exposed enough to failure and hardship, A, to learn how to deal with it and to know sometimes life sucks. Sometimes you can't do it. Sometimes, actually, often, there are people who are better than you out there. And just because you worked your hardest doesn't mean you're going to get there. And certainly, if you're not working your hardest, you probably won't get there. But sometimes people are so lucky that they don't have to do anything and they get there anyhow, right? So they're not learning those lessons. They're not
Yes.
learning by trial and error how to problem solve, how to figure things out. They're basically being told consciously, like, overtly and subconsciously by their parents, "You can't do this, so I'm gonna do it for you."
Yes. That is the
And
message that's so detrimental. You can't do this, so let me help. They don't even
yeah,
give them an opportunity to succeed or fail. It's just they've already made the decision. The verdict is cast.
right, and so, I have a 17 and a 14-year-old right now, and, um, my 17-year-old had some question, my husband was giving him advice, my kid wasn't in a mood where he wanted to listen to the advice, and my husband was getting really frustrated, and at some point
Right.
in time, I just said, "Leon," that's my husband, I'm like, "Listen, you told him what you think he needs to know, he doesn't have to listen to you." And I looked at my oldest, Luca, and I'm like, "Luca, dude, you gotta make the choices you make, right? I'm gonna trust that you're gonna make a wise choice, but we can't make these decisions for you. Like, this is our suggestion on how to handle this. You gotta do what you're gonna do, right? Whether that's not getting the grade in, which they're pretty good students, whether that's half-assing something, whether that's making your life." I'm like, "I can't. I want to. It's painful for me to see my children struggle." Like, there's a thing that they don't explain to you before your parents where, like, viscerally, you literally feel it, like, it makes your skin crawl to watch your children struggle. But this is something I've done since when my kids were small, they'd be like, "My shoelace is untied." And I'm like, "Mhm. My
Uh-huh.
shoelace is untied." I'm like, "Well, first of all, that's a statement. So I see your shoelace is untied. That's really interesting." And I'm like, "Is there a question there? Can you tie my shoelace?" And I'm like, "Well, no. Well, I can, but I'm not going to."
Right.
And then they'd be like, I'm like, "You tie your shoe." "I don't know how to." I'm like, "You gotta try, kiddo. I'll show you one, and then I done do it."
Mhm.
And I do this even with their friends, which probably made me not the most popular mom around. They'd be like, "I'm thirsty." I'm like, "Great, little Billy, you're thirsty. I'm thirsty. Is there a question there? I want some water." Still not a question, a statement. "Can
Right.
I have some water?" I'm like, "You can. The cups are down there. I put them at child level. There's a stool. There's the faucet,"
Sure.
right? Even
It's
small things like that build that resilient but healthy resilience
yes.
as opposed to toxic resilience, right? Where they
Yes.
learn the skill set that comes with this.
Yes. It instills the agency, even at a
Mhm.
very young age. And also, something I found, please correct me if you have other opinions on it. I find that people that are usually handed something like that will often use their creativity and their moxie to find a way to justify what's been said instead of finding an actual solution to the problem.
Oh, that's interesting. I had not thought about that, but yeah, I could stand behind that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because if you're raised in a certain way, like you're saying, like the parent says, you can't do this, let me do it for you. Instead of this child, this young adult actually growing into adulthood, joining the workforce and society, instead of trying to find a way to prove they can do the thing, they find creative and imaginative ways to justify not doing the thing or getting
Yeah,
something,
yeah, I
the
can see I can
payoff without the effort.
yeah. And these poor
So,
kids, right? Because we've done that to
ugh,
them, but then we've put them in one of the hardest historical, political, economic times
economic,
since
absolutely.
the Second World War. So we now have 2 going on 3 generations of kids who we have not raised to deal with the hardship that they're about to face, and I really feel for the hardship
Truth. Well,
that
and I
they're
think that
facing.
we have so much fault in the situation that we've given them. Not only did we not prepare them, we also made things so much harder than people
Yeah,
say 40, 50 years ago had to deal with. We've given them the old 1-2 punch, and God love them, they're still having a tough time getting up off the ground.
yeah,
And it's getting to a point now where there are some options on the table that are not the most pleasant. And also, they have lived through so many iterations of unprecedented times. I can't blame them for wanting to just push people into traffic. I can't. I'm like, yeah,
yeah,
some of these
yeah,
folks got it coming. Sorry, I really want to be that pacifistic or violence never solved anything. But I can also understand why these people are so frustrated. They're probably ready to take a swing at a few of us.
yeah.
So
I wanted to give it to them because I didn't want it to become a, "Oh, these, Gen Z, alpha, younger
right,
millennial," like, listen, It's your parents, it's not you. Let's just start with
Bingo.
that.
They're
So,
working with what they were given.
It's
Sure.
Gen X and younger boomers because they're the ones who snowplowed. They're the ones who helicopter parented.
Yep.
And the beauty. So one of my guiding principles in life is agency.
Mhm.
A long time ago, I did Simon Sinek's "What is your why?" And my why, fundamentally, in everything I do, is to help people understand that they can live a life with a minimum number of regrets, and that the way you do that is you take ownership of your choices and actions. And that's agency. Like, you might have grown up with a parent who did everything for you, and you're like, fuck, like, I'm anxious, I haven't learned how to do anything. But you just had that awareness. And the second you have that awareness, you got a choice. You can continue living in that world where you tell yourself you're not capable, you're not competent, you can't do anything, you need somebody else to solve the world's problems for you, or the world should have no problems. Good luck with that.
Right.
Or you can go, okay, so what do I need to do to make myself figuratively and probably literally in some ways combat ready, to face life and to be able to not just survive, but thrive. Because that's what
Yes.
radical joy is about. It's about thriving.
It's the thrive for sure. That goes in my journal almost every day. I am shining and thriving. And I know it sounds trite. It's just one of those things. I love the rhyme. And it just gives me a good feeling. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to just make it through, because I think so many people feel as though that's all they have. I just want to get through today. I was like, okay, great. No, that's wonderful. That's a goal. I said, I think that's baseline. I think we can shoot a lot higher than that. I know where you went to school. I know what you've got as far as like your talents and your gifts and your passions. We can do a little bit more than survive, just from what I've seen. And you
Mm.
continue to sort of like finesse it a little bit.
Yeah.
You find a way to work it a little bit higher so that there is space between that baseline and where they're operating, and it continues to elevate. And it's wonderful because it's not just for them, it's for everyone in their circle.
Mhm.
And if that circle gets a little small, they may have to move to a different circle, like what we were talking about earlier. Not comfortable, still necessary to maintain that growth and keep the journey going.
Yeah.
So, Alessandra, thank you so much for joining us on Radical Joy. It has been a pleasure speaking with you. Inspirational is a word I like to say, but that sounds a little bit passive. It motivated me to do better, not just for myself, but also for my clients and anybody listening here at Radical Joy. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your opinions with us. This is incredible.
I appreciate the invitation, the conversation, and the reminders. Like, every single one of the aren't we so lucky? I'm
Yeah.
gonna leave it at that. We're so lucky that in our work, we get to be reminded every single day of what we can and need to do to live in these spaces of radical joy, to thrive, and to be fully fulfilled.
Thank
I
you.
mean, we're
Yes,
so
that's a
lucky.
beautiful way to say it. Here in the show notes, we're going to have so many ways that you can get in touch with Alessandra. If what you've heard today has moved you, wonderful. I love to hear. We're going to give you every possible way of keeping in touch and staying in contact with her via social media and all of her channels. If this is your first episode of Radical Joy, welcome. What a wonderful episode to begin your journey with us here at CLW Studios. If this is not your first episode, welcome back. We know how tight time is budgeted these days. Thank you for spending some of your time every week with us. And as always, please never forget, friends, we love y'all. This episode isn't here to fix you. It's here to sit beside you while you reconsider what enough might feel like, to loosen the pressure just a little, to remind you that ease isn't laziness and wanting more doesn't mean something's wrong. We're really, really glad you're here. I am not a therapist or a medical professional. If you're experiencing a mental health emergency, please call 988 to reach the National Crisis Lifeline. This content and other content produced by CLW Studios and affiliated partners is not therapy, and nothing in this content indicates a therapeutic relationship. Any opinions of guests on this podcast are their own and do not represent the opinions of James or CLW Studios. Please consult with your therapist or seek one in your area if you're experiencing mental health symptoms. Everything in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only.